Welcome. You are listening to the Great Brook podcast. Each week, Maura Snow and Tanya Middleton discuss issues in the workplace and take a page out of their personal life experiences to discuss potential solutions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kareen Joseph. I am the producer and editor for the Great Brook podcast. And today I am interviewing Tanya Middleton. She is one of the co-hosts for the Great Brook podcast. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and also check us out on YouTube as well. So, Tanya, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kareen.
The way we're doing this, the same way we did last time, I'm going to be asking Tanya to fill us in on what her life was like. It's going to be in 5 segments at 3 minutes each. Tanya, we're going to be starting off with ages from 0 to 11. I have my timer. Let me know when you're ready and I can start the timer.
Okay, well, I'm ready.
Okay, 3 minutes, go.
All right. So from just say my birth until about 11 years old, I'm not going to say it was really eventful. I understand that I was born a little late. My mom's water bag broke early on, and then I was born a few weeks later. Just kind of like more growing up from there as a kid. Went to my elementary schools. If I was to say anything significant between this period of time, when I would just sit around with my sisters, especially on Friday night, there was this show called Creature Feature. I don't know if you were old enough, if you remember Creature Feature, Corinne, but anyway, it was like a scary movie that would show every Friday night. The local station would do the Creature Feature and it'd be a scary movie that's out. So when I would sit and watch it, I guess, I don't know if it was my anxiety, my nervousness, or just whatever, I would sit up there and I would braid my hair. I would start braiding on my hair, just playing with it. And then I recall, like, after putting some braids, like the next day, my oldest sister was like, "You did those braids?" I said, "Yeah, I did those braids while I was sitting up there watching Creature Feature last night." And she was like, "They really look good. Braid my hair." And I'm like, "Really?" And I couldn't see because they were in the back of my head at that time. So I went ahead on to braid my sister's hair. And from that, I started the beginning of my hair braiding career at like 10 years old, braiding my sister's family, cousins' hair. And it was just more or less like a hobby, just spare time, braiding, having fun, just, we'll sit up and talk. But it began watching Creature Feature at about 10 years old. And so I would say, in regards to any significance, that would be the beginning of me, let's say, working with a lot of different people, personalities, and honestly, starting like my first business. And then, so at this point, now we're in the next segment, right? Like 11, 12 years old to
12 to
23.
12 to 20, yeah, 12 to 23, yes. Okay, 3 minutes, go.
All right. So from 12 to 23, I would say I would be continuing into my first business of hair braiding at 12 years old. And I would remember a significant time at 13 years old when one of my dad's friends, he had a daughter. He wanted me to braid her hair. And he said, "How much will you charge me to braid, my daughter's hair?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing," because I had really been doing it as a hobby, more freestyling. I didn't charge anybody anything. And he was like, "Well, no, I need a price." He said, "Whenever you're doing something for somebody," he said, "that's your time. It's valuable. You can charge for it." And I'm like, "Well, at the time, I really didn't know. I'm 12 years old. You want me to set some prices?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So he refused to let me do his daughter's hair until I told him how much I would charge him. So at the time, I was like, I came up with the amount of $15. What I would be doing is cornrows all over her hair. That's the braids that's like click to your, that's um, braided to your hair. They're not individual loose braids. So I would cornrow her hair and add what we call beads. They're little, accessories to apply to the end of the braids. So I did that for $15 at 13 years old. So then that really begins the beginning of my paid experience as a hair braider. I did this almost every weekend. That was how I made my money. My mom allowed me to keep my hair braiding money, for myself. To buy the little things that I wanted, or if I want to go out to the movies with my friends, it was extra money for us to be able to get our little hot dogs and popcorn. Or sometimes I would even go to the amusement parks where I had the carnivals. I got money now, My mom would take care of all the essential stuff that we needed, but she would allow me to use my hair braiding money for myself. So that's pretty much what I did at 13, 14, 15 on up. I pretty much survived off of doing or braiding hair all through the rest of my middle school, high school. I went to work right out after high school, so I pretty much braided at least through the age of 23 years old. Besides, that I finished my high school, graduated from Skyline High School, which is also another significant, I would say, significant point in my life. Skyline High School was in the Oakland Hills, so was definitely a more.
Okay, you have your you have your 3 minutes. Your 3 minutes are up. So so we're gonna have to move on now.
That's great, no problem, no problem.
Okay, so now we're at ages 24 to 35. Okay, 24 to 35. Okay, 3 minutes. Go.
Okay, so then from ages 24 to 35, at that point now, I'm pretty much just growing up, right? I'm a young girl, I'm working. I do have a kid at that time. I had a child at the age of 19, turning 20 years old. So at this point, I'm pretty much braiding hair. I would take on other little jobs as well, working with various companies. One main thing during my high school year, I went to an ROP program. I learned insurance office. So by now, I'm kind of working full time, part time with different insurance companies, braiding hair on the side to make additional money, and just really just growing into myself. Up until about 29 years old, I decided I need to do some post high school education. So I resigned my position working with Bank of America. Resigned my position to go to school full time. I had a child, so I wanted to make sure that I was available for him after school as well. So we went to school at the same time, which is the reason why I went ahead on and resigned. So while he's in school, I'm in school. By the time he comes home, I'm already done with my courses for the day. A lot of times we're able to kind of get to the table, do our homework, before I, feed him and he go to bed for the next day. So this is pretty much my life up until about 29, 29, 30, 35. I'm going to college. I start off at in Oakland at Laney College, JC, getting my associates in science, pre-engineering. I do that. And then around 1999, I transferred to Sacramento, to California State University, Sacramento, in the Triple E program, Electrical and Electronics Engineering. I do that course till about 2000 and about 2004 when I'm completing my engineering. One thing about that was really significant, I would say, my dean, when I interviewed with him, his thing was, I asked the question, what's the challenges out there with engineers? He said the biggest challenge was communication, especially between business management and engineers, because they spoke kind of like two different languages. For some reason, that kind of inspired me to start taking additional communication courses on the side, anything that had to do with either group discussion, interpersonal relationships. And I also then took some of my writing courses too, writing for publication, fiction writing, screenwriting, just different anything that had to do with either writing or communications. Those were most of my electives and side courses when I was pursuing my degree in engineering.
Okay, so we 3 minutes are done. So now we're on ages 35 to 46. You have your 3 minutes. Go.
And then from that point, say 35 years old, by now I'm um, back in the workforce. I needed to kind of go back to work at this point because I had spent enough time kind of, doing the schoolwork and limited income. So now, at the same time, I was still braiding, though. That's a lot of what uh, allowed me to kind of continue in school the way I did. By now, I'm doing various different styles. My prices have went from $15 to at least about $150, per head. So that really helped out my household and helped me raise my child as well as take myself back to college. Working in the industry, I started off working with a company JVC out in Sacramento. One of the reasons that I went into electrical electronics engineering, I love music. I'm a music connoisseur as well. So as I braided hair and everything, all my money mostly went to buying records and stuff. And I would play this music while I'm doing hair. It was kind of like, part of that. And in it also, I loved sound. Sound, it had to sound good. I'm one of them people from, the Bay Area, so I needed some bump. It needed to, the bass. I wanted to hear good quality sound. So this was also what really inspired me to become or go into engineering. I wanted to be behind some of the designs behind the stereos. Some of the stereos I was playing, some of them wasn't kicking like I wanted to kick, or the speakers. So I kind of really delved into that portion of it. Well, of course, at this point now, computers are mainly taking over everything. Again, one of the reasons why I did electrical was to be able to enhance studio a stereo quality sound. But at the same time, now I'm recognizing more and more what the dean was saying about communication being a problem in the industry. I'm now faced with this myself, to the point I take more interest in the roles that allow me to work with management more so than the production side roles or the background roles. So now I'm back to work. I relocate back to the Bay Area, Oakland, California, from Sacramento, California. And then I get a position with a big pharma company. And this pretty much starts my career in biotech life sciences.
Okay, and that's time. So now we're at ages 36 to 47.
Yes.
Okay, 36 to 47. 1 second. 3 minutes. Go.
So from 36 to 47, now I'm back in the workforce. Started off actually, before I actually went into a biotech, I went into what is called career transitioning company, Lee Hecht Harrison, in working with actually through Adecco USA. Here's where now I deal with let's say the layoffs. This is where now I'm dealing with working with employees who have recently been laid off. We were going through the .com bust at that point. So I'm working with the Yahoos and the different companies that did massive layoffs during that period of time. And basically my role was a person who in the background, project administrator, project management, where we manage all of the different companies based on their layoffs. And we also did executive coaching, resume writing, just a lot of skill building once you leave the workplace and you start trying to get to start back or restart. So this also not only allowed me to work in a more diverse population with different people, because of course, I dealt with a lot of science-based companies due to the fact it was during the dot-com bust. But also, it also allowed me to now understand more of what the needs were. So as I'm working with Lee Hecht Harrison, I did more of the West Coast. So I worked anywhere from San Jose, Oakland, Sacramento. We were pretty much all over this, kind of like even up to Washington. And so I do this for a few years before I have to now transition again. And this particular transition, I decided I wanted to kind of go in a government office. So I started working with the Internal Revenue Service. And this is now where I'm using more of some of my, I guess, just skills, and not only mathematics, but just Now, this is very much all customer service, a lot of communication. And main reason why I took this position was now I'm just trying to get back to work. Okay. I've been in school. I needed to kind of, start really getting my income up a little more. So I'm just working right now. No real particular career plan at this point other than just make some money, right? So I worked with the government for a while, but because it was a seasonal role and position, I went ahead on and just took whatever skills I could out of that. But once the season ended, I think I worked maybe 2 seasons with the Internal Revenue Service. I realized, okay, this is not going to really take me anywhere, not seasonally. I mean, I could have got on permanent at some point in regards to where I'm working every day, but there was still that transition.
Okay, that's 3 minutes. All right. So now we are at ages 48 to 55. All right. This is the last segment. So you got 3 minutes, 48 to 55. Go.
Okay, so now I'm working. I decide at this point, okay, it's time to really get into some career-based roles. So I go into big pharma, start my life science career. At that point, everything is going really good. I'm project management with the occupational health department for a company out of Berkeley, California. At the same time, now my family is getting older, so I also started caregiving. So I take in my aunt, I'm working with her, I'm working with the system, I'm being an advocate for her. At the same time, I'm working my job in the big pharma and more or less on occupational health safety side, as well as now we're dealing with HR, and we're also dealing with like just diversity, cultural fairs, safety fairs. I'm in the department that kind of manages a lot of that. So I was exposed to not only the diversity of the companies, but just the different background things that have to happen besides just research, right? So I'm not on the research side. I'm more on the I think they call it like more general administrative side or whatever. It's just basically where your HR people, your finance people, all of these folks kind of are bundled in when you look at the corporate structure. So I'm working, learning, building. Um, but I'm realizing at this point also, there wasn't many of us in this industry. Where are not only the African Americans, just it was not a lot of underrepresented people. Although big pharma, we had really good groups. We had things in place to hopefully bring in a more diverse talent. However, there was struggle there for many reasons. Some being the fact that, we just couldn't find the talent. There was none locally enough for us to really grab and to, put them to work. As well as there was still those hierarchical organizational structures in place that limited many folks from being accepted in these roles. So in that, it really concerned me. I mean, I realized that a lot of folks looked at me in a sense of almost how you get here or you're here so we can get more. But it was real clear that I was there kind of probably by tokenism in some ways. So it really concerned me to the point that I took more of an interest of, trying to be visible and be the face for the company, not for any other reason other than representation matters. And I wanted to make sure that we were fully represented in the industry. And by learning from, my education in sciences and as well as some of my work experience, it started to take over more so again than me being the research scientist or person in a lab. I just always felt like I needed to be out front and visible to help bring in more talent like me. So this is pretty much where I am at this age of my life, and so that takes me into meeting Mora, getting into insights, also becoming her director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as just what I'm doing now as an independent consultant to help drive workplace solutions for the underrepresented, especially within the African American culture within life sciences. So that's where I am now. And that's part of what we're going to be doing here, even with the podcast, is to put out as much information necessary to grow this area.
Okay, excellent. So now I'm going to ask you a few questions based on what you have told me, among some questions you wanted me to ask you beforehand. So my first question to you is, what was it like having a business so young, back when you were like 12? I think you said you started your hair business back when you were 12. So like, what was it like being like a business owner at like the age of 12?
It was great, except that I didn't know what the heck I was doing. This is where parenting, really comes to play. I really wish my mom would have been a little more, I guess, prepared for what I was going to be doing, because I didn't have, I guess, real good guidance. However, I will say it was really good that I could make my own money, and it was really good meeting a lot of different people. I really believe it shaped me into being the advocate that I am now, because you sitting there for hours and hours at a time having these conversations with people. I just learned so much. So it was definitely great for me in regards to the extra learning skills that I got. And even, the money, although I wish I had somebody to help me manage that money better, so I could have saved it more instead of spending it. I did spend. It wasn't a whole, like, don't get me wrong, I'm going to school, so it's not like I'm doing this every day full time. It was more part time. So the part time funds were actually really good. However, if I really knew what I was really doing, or had someone to really assist me who could really understand what I was doing at that age, and where I could have took this, I would have I would have loved to have met someone at that age that could have helped me there. But it was great having a business at 12 years old and being my own boss really up until I was well in my 30s, 40s.
What got you into Bank of America? I know you mentioned that you were still doing hair like all the way through college, but like, I guess what I'm really asking is, so you did Bank of America and this, so why did you feel as though you needed to do two jobs?
So okay, so sometimes, because braiding can, the financial part of it can be tricky, especially with folks sometimes canceling appointments, right? So I couldn't always count on that money, as well as I really didn't have benefits. So that's really what would always take me into the workplace. So I really went and started actually a temporary position, and I landed at Bank of America. There was a merger with Security Pacific and Bank of America. So I went in when the Security Pacific came in, and I started kind of dealing in this new department they had, which was the Retirement Products Service Center. From there, it was like I was back office, but I'm dealing with all of the IRAs, all the brokerage. I'm dealing with all of the stocks and everything like that. When rollovers, distributions, it was so like, I liked it because of the fact that it was not only teaching me more financial tools that I needed, like I said, as having a business right early. Here now, I'm learning some financial management tools, and even SEPs, how to get into a self-employed program. So I started working with them. I became permanent with them probably after about 6 months, once they realized that I had definitely the skill base. I worked solely with the brokerage department. They moved me to that one because I was called Columbo, because I found any mistakes, any problems. So I was Columbo on the job. Take it to Columbo if you had a little, if you was looking for something, need some help, or trying to figure something out, because she gonna figure it out. So that was really good for me. But it also showed me that as I'm doing all these higher level positions, I couldn't get these positions, because now it's like, well, you don't have a degree, or you don't have a this, or is it just because I'm black? I really wasn't sure, but I'm fulfilling roles at the associate vice president level. Yet I could not get those roles for one reason or another. So this is really what took me to go back to school, and this is why I resigned from there and went ahead on and focused on getting my degree, because I was like, I'm running departments, I'm leading, many employees, yet I could not secure the higher role due to either not having a degree. At least that was what I was told. But even when I'll just say degree and other factors came to play. So I realized, no, Tanya, stop, go to college, get what you need, because I didn't want nobody else to tell me, no, you cannot be in this role because of this particular reason. You're going to now have to tell me it's because you're a black woman and we don't want to see you here. Or you have to tell me something else. But you're not going to tell me because you don't have that degree that we need for you to be able to move up at this point. So
Okay.
that's what made me go back to school and do what I had to do.
So when you were so when you were back in school, why did you feel you needed to focus so much on the communication aspect?
Well, because of my work experiences, getting out there working in industries where I clearly witnessed that management wanted what management wanted. They were not listening to the actual employees that were doing the work. But I'm also understanding the challenge between if I need something done, say a modification, you want me to fix, say, add something to a keyboard, all you're saying is, I want you to put this here, but you're not really communicating to me exactly all the specifications of what's really necessary. And I started just seeing the language barriers, really. So with that, and me knowing, because now I've had the opportunity to not only learn, but I've also went into some of the work industries where I'm seeing basically this divide. It just made me that much more curious of wanting to know. And that's kind of like a sponge for learning or curiosity. If it's something that says, I want to figure it out. And that's what took me there.
You were Bank of America, then you left, went back to school. You focused a lot on communication, and then the next thing you mentioned was you got into the Internal Revenue Service, or as us Joe Public, we like to say the IRS. So this is
Right.
more of a personal question I have for you. Then, how does the IRS communicate with people? Because like you hear about, there are a lot of like scams going on, and like the scam would say like, oh, I work for the IRS, and so you owe like X amount of money, and in reality, no, the IRS doesn't call people. So how does the IRS communicate with the public, if the IRS does?
I mean, the first they're going to notify you by mail,
Okay.
and usually they're going to notify you by certified mail if they need your attention. So you'll get a bunch of notifications, certified mail coming from the Internal Revenue Service. That is the first initial way that they are going to contact you. They're not going to even call you and ask you any of your personal information up front. You will get that letter, and then you're going to be the one calling in, and you're going to go through a bunch of what we call identifiers before we even start discussing anything with you about an account. So definitely through mail and through a series of identification questions before we would even start looking into your account, if you
Okay.
have one.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think your communication skills and past work experience was a major factor getting you into big pharma? Because like that's the next thing you had talked about.
Yes and no. I would say more of, so I went in on a project to build a database to help, because basically I went into occupational health. We were transitioning some files, so I had to kind of really build a database for them. So I went in a more project management mindset and role. However, with that, yes, I will say my communication, because then at that point the manager realized that I was able to actually teach her entire team what was next, because at the same time Big Pharma was also rolling out to a new Microsoft platform. They had pretty much been on an old Lotus Notes and some old SAP platforms, let's just say platform servers, things like that. So they're transitioning over. Now we're in the Microsoft stage. Okay, we had about Microsoft 10 or so, 13, and they're just now coming on board. So bottom line, I went ahead I stayed on board to assist the team with, learning all the suites, the Microsoft apps, as well as just kind of helping them understand the database that I had built for them, how they access is, what they need to do to get the information back out, what they need to do to put new information in. So all of that was then a part of my work experience there. And yeah, from that, my manager realized you could do a lot of things. You a keeper. So she continued to find me roles in different areas just to keep me on board, because she was like, I'm not going to lose you like that. And this is where then, when this is almost like a Mara situation, this is where we get our allies and people who can recognize that you have skills way beyond what we got you doing right here. And we're going to keep you around one way or another, because we know we're going to need it at some point. So I think that was it. It was communication with a lot of work experience, because I've always kind of would go in and out, just get me a job whenever I felt I needed to supplement that hair business.
Okay, you're not working at that company anymore, correct?
We were laid off in about 2016 ish. Yes.
Okay. So what were those things that the company offered you in order to keep you longer?
Well, definitely the pay was very good. So they had good pay, along with, there was, it was a global company, and there were just so many opportunities. And just with all of those pieces, I was like, this is where I need to be, because even though I have a variety of skill sets, I saw where I can use them in just many areas. On top of the fact that, because I also saw that the money and the benefits were good and there were not enough of us, I needed to make sure that, hey, we need to be here too. And I wanted to make sure that even some of my own folks realized that, you can do well even working in some of these local pharma companies, on a variety level positions. So that's really what kept me. It was just global, was big. It was so much going on, and it just thrilled me that everything that I've done at that point, I could find use for it there.
So this is going to be somewhat personal question based on what you've told me so far. Why do you feel you need to push yourself so hard regarding having other people of color in the workplace?
Well, I just feel it's my responsibility. I mean, as a African American person, I mean, in my culture and just the way I've been raised, I just feel like, it's a each one teach one, as well as we lead. It's like a village. And I just want to be a part of that village, which represents my culture of African American um, descent. I just feel like it matters, because one, communication for one, and how we're raised also plays a part. There's somebody who could understand you on a different level, right? I just felt like if it was just me around, who can I really go to if it was an issue that I just might need to speak to one of my Black counterparts about? I just feel that it's very necessary for even the fact in research. I'll be perfectly honest. The main thing was in research. Who's going to diagnose our high blood pressure, and who's going to diagnose a lot of these diseases that we get? I noticed that a lot of that stuff was not really pushed. I've also seen where it was not pushed because there was just not enough concern, because it didn't affect those that were in charge of deciding what gets pushed and what doesn't. So I just felt like if there's more of us there, then we also can now start looking into those diseases, those areas of concern that doesn't get looked at for the African American group.
Are you still doing hair on the side, or are you totally done with that?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
they won't let me. Yes, yes, yes. I was just visiting home. I had put some braids in my son's hair. I had to do, yeah, yes. I have a little cousin waiting on me to braid her hair now. She's here. She's like, "You back in St. Louis? I need my hair done." So I'm like, okay, Maddie, I'll see you next week. I mean, even the little kids still wants me to do their hair. Seriously. They're like, okay. And then I do my own. So yes, I still do hair.
Okay.
They won't let me retire, even though I think I retired about 20 years ago.
So, what was it like um, being a college student as a single mom with one child in grade school?
And that actually, I liked it. I liked it for the simple fact I think it helped my son. And because we had to both sit up and study and do our homework, I know it helped him a lot. But it was eye opening because many folks think you can't do it. And many times folks think, well, oh, I have kids and I have to raise my family, that they don't think about some of the personal things that they can do for themselves too. So I thought it was really good because it also showed me that, hey, this can be done. And sometimes mothers, when you don't go to school, you beat yourself up because you didn't go to school first and you had a kid and you do these things and you think it's over. And for me, it was kind of like redemptive to the point where, hey, I can still be successful and still do some things that I thought maybe I couldn't have done because I had a kid at 19 years old.
Okay. Um, Tanya, thank you for the opportunity to get to interview you. Where can people find you online?
Facebook, Tanya.Middleton.tm. No, that's not Facebook. Tanya Laverne Middleton is my Facebook. At Tanya Laverne is my Instagram. And where else can you find me? LinkedIn, Tanya Middleton.
Hi, I'm Maura Snow. My co-host Tanya Middleton and I would like to thank you for listening to this episode of the Great Brook Podcast. Our producer and editor is Corrine Joseph. Special thank you to Acton TV for use of their studio located in Acton, Massachusetts. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Great Brook Podcast.